Excellent. We look like we might have gone live. We'll just give it a time for everything to catch up between the systems. It's never, always takes a little bit to get there. Excellent. Let me share. Excellent. Make sure we've got no sound on there. Take that over there. And we might even find an apron because we've got a decent-ish top on. So let's just pop that on and we won't have too much mess. Good evening, Imrene. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, there we are. Let's just pop that on there. Tie that up. Sort out the frozen shoulder in the process. There we are. Oh, she says she's got stuff everywhere. Wouldn't be me if I didn't have stuff everywhere. Now, really, would it? It just would not. So let's just wait. It's just 6 o'clock. So, there we are. Whilst we're waiting for people to come in, let's just delabel this because that will be helpful. I'm just going to heat up the glue. It's a really helpful way of getting rid of stuff, making it easier to clean. Sorry for walking away, ladies. That wasn't very polite, was it? But there you are. Yeah, there's nothing like thinking about changing my mind. I'm not going to change my mind. How's that? Good. Don't know what's going on this evening. So I just have a wooden box here. Hi Sheila, thank you for joining us, my darling. Wooden box, 3 compartments, sort of storage, and we're going to do something relatively simple tonight. A little bit of fun, a little bit of a twist, because why not? Why not? Why not? So we're going to make a custom colour because we can. So let me just grab a pot. I can make a custom colour in because just because we have colours in a set range does not mean that we have to use them as we are. Good evening, Isabella. Hello, Juliana. So I have the wall decor coloured lasers tonight. The other week I used antique, and then I've used the metallics. I need to mix. Let's get rid of the mess from before. Oh, because you're colour mixing, you need to make enough for your whole project, because it's highly unlikely that you'll manage to make the exact same thing twice. Well, if you me, it will be incredibly difficult to do that. So I'm just going to mix it up. And of course, if you had some smaller pots left over, a little bit of glass storage tubs or plastic pots with lids, then what's left could be scraped into a pot and kept for another time. But here we are. And this is, so that was the the ochre, and this is Bordeaux. And Bordeaux you think is a dark red. That does not look dark red to me in any shape or fashion, but it has got a red base to it. And actually when it's watered down, it's actually almost a magenta colour. It's rather pretty. So let's just take some of that. It does have a red hue. There we are. Let's just pop some of that onto there. There we are. And we can always add a bit more if we want. So let's just make a colour that I think might work better. So, okay, have I added too much to it? Possibly. So I've now got a custom colour, and I might add just a little bit more of the ochre into that because it's a little bit browner, though it will be paler than that ultimately as it sinks in, because these are translucent. The whiteness will settle down. Let's get the right lid on the right product. Hi Juliana, welcome my darling, thank you for joining us. So let's just pop that over there, pop that over there. And this is the joy, we can then custom colour to the project that we want. So let's just mix that in, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of a softer colour with an orangey tone. So let's just get this all mixed in. That's better. That's definitely better. There we are. Let's just mix it all in so we get an even colour. So you can custom mix whatever you want. And as I say, this will alter when it's on the wood, because that's what happens with these products as they sink in. So let us just add some paint into here. We've got quite a lot to cover. Oh, sorry. Quite a lot to cover, and that's fine. But I'm hoping that I have got the right amounts mixed, because otherwise I'd have done what I said to you don't do. I can always add a little bit of water to help spread it, but that's also live. So we've got a sort of soft pumpkiny orangey brown, but definitely not a rust colour. There we are. So let's just pop these in and carry on and paint everything. Well, we're not painting everything. Quite a lot of it's going to get painted, so I do apologise. Let me sit my bottom down. We might as well. We're going to be using a mould from Whispering Woods, because why not? And we might do these in some stages. We've got a little bit of decoupage paper, we've got a single mould, we've got some stamps, we've got some stencils. But we're going to have a good time mixing up our products and our makes. And there's no way that I can manage to do this and keep it all in shot because it's down in the depths, but that's okay. There we are. Hey, let's just get this out. And this is a stain, it will sink into the wood, so that's cool. There we are. So yeah, we'll just have to carry on, and we might do some of it post live, because otherwise, but you'll get, it is difficult when you want a custom colour to do that. So patience is a virtue. We will just there we are, come up on the edge. So I know where I'm going tonight, but this could be any form of box, any surface that you wanted. The advantage is that the wood texture will be visible through this once it's dry. So which is why I'm choosing to use that rather than an acrylic paint at this stage. But we've got a mixture of different products out on the side, so that's always good. And I can see the wood texture, and I think it's quite nice if you've got an item made from wood to be able to use and show off the wood grains rather than covering it. There we are. Maybe I should just have a bigger brush. What do we reckon, ladies? We're going to have a quiet night tonight looking at things. That's okay. It's always difficult, I think. And this week is definitely, I think, Gabby has an autumn piece planned for tomorrow, and so has Blanche for the following day. So there we are. There is no short circuiting this, but at least this means that I don't have to gesso everything, though that I would have done off the live, to be fair to everyone. Hi Judith, welcome my darling. Thank you for joining us this evening. There we are. Okay, we'll keep that at an angle. We're decorating a wooden box. For those of you that are in Hungary, this box is a piece that Pentart have in their web shop, so that's also cool, isn't it, from that point of view. Oh, yeah. And then we're going to do the unthinkable later on as well. We're going to chop up a stencil for reasons that will absolutely become clear, because it's going to be easier to use them as I want them chopped up. So just because a company provides something in a set format, that's not how you wish to use them. Okay. It's your stencil once you've bought it. So feel free to have a chop of it up. We're going to do the inside and the front, and I will leave the very back of the project on the outside, and I will do that off the live, because otherwise we might be here for a silly amount of time. I'll carry on painting all of this to our heart's content. Wow. Or not, as the case may be, but there we are. There we are. And I might regret saying I'll do the back off the live, because the chances of me keeping this paint, the lasur, clear, dry overnight once everything else, while everything's set, is probably remote. But hey ho, we'll do our best to colour match it, but because it'll be a whole side, actually if you come back to it, it won't be so obvious. I think by the time we do that. There we are. Oops, so that bit's clearly not mixed in quite as well at the bottom, but that's okay. We'll sort that out. We'll just mix it in across. So it's not so obviously not well mixed in. There we are. So as they say, don't be afraid to colour mix for yourselves, because that way your project absolutely will be completely unique to you. You're welcome always to take ideas from my lives. You're welcome to copy projects as exactly as you can. You could do this, as I say, on pretty much any base without problem. Yeah, so it's just not very easy doing this and what you're watching what I'm doing, is it? But hey ho, well, we will just take our time, because once this bit's done, the rest of it is going to be all visible from the outside, so that will make life a bit easier for people. And I like my projects to be properly finished, so yeah, it's good to do just. And also, if we're doing it real time, I think it's easier for people to understand how long a piece might take them. There we are. Make sure we've covered everything. That's always helpful, isn't it? There we are. Let's just come up here. We have a plan. We have several plans, in fact, but there we are. It's always good to have a plan. There we are. We are getting there. We are definitely getting there. There we are. As I say, I can do the that bit off the live, but some of the rest of it will be harder to do. So I trust that everyone is well. And then whilst we're here, we can have a think about what we might want to do for next week's live. I've done a couple of projects then, one storage, one mixed media home decor picture piece with whispering woods. So I don't know what people might like me to do next week. Perhaps an art journal page or two with the junk journal, an ephemera book from Voyages Fantastic, maybe. Does that sound okay to? Oh dear, oh dear! It's just as well I want to paint that back, that colour, isn't it? There we are. There we are. We're getting there. The plus side of this is it's not going to take a silly amount of time to dry. We just have to be patient whilst we do it. There we are. You see what I mean by it's wise to make a reasonable amount of project. Sounds good. Brilliant. So that, thank you, Sheila. So something art journaling with the Voyage is fantastic. We can do that, I think. We have several ideas. I like the characters in the new junk journal collection from the Voyage is fantastic. They weren't in the original collection, so I think it's quite nice to have some little people rather than it being all hot air balloons and mechanicals. There were two people, actually, to be fair. There was a male and a female character in the original, but they were more abstract than a different personality, I think, to the ones in the new collection, particularly the rub-ons with the new collection. So let's just go with that. Oh, my phone is buzzing in the background. There we are. We're getting there, ladies. We are getting there. Maybe I should have thought about this before I went live, in terms of the amount of time it would take to do all of this. But if you have a pet base in a project, you just need to do that. And I have a lot of my followers and friends who like the fact that I do things largely from start to finish when I'm making, so they can see all of the steps along the processes along the way. There we are. Have I got one more bit to do? Of course I've got one more bit inside to do. Yeah, why not? Why not? Right, let's just do that side of that, preferably without getting too much on the side. I have a slightly different plan for the end pieces of this make, so that's okay. There we are. There we are. Good. And whilst this has a dry, I'll wax some gesso onto the one piece of resin I've got for painting today. I know I hear you say one piece of resin. Yeah, one piece of resin. It's all I have out I know, unheard of. It'll still take me forever, won't it? Because that's just like, right, let me pop that up there. So the reason I've decided to paint the front of here is I didn't want to go matching my rice paper in entirely into this. So we're going to, because it doesn't quite fit along the edges, the whole width of this piece. So hence the decision to do things differently and to mix things up. Let's get rid of that white line from along that edge of the wood. There we are. And I will paint all the way around, well, use the lacer all the way around the bottom of my piece, but I won't necessarily, again, I'm not necessarily going to do that all the way throughout. Excuse me for bashing my camera. That's not very nice of me. There we are. This has got a beveled edge, which so I'm just going to cover that. Pop that into there, get rid of that. We can touch up as we want, which is cool. Oh, she says, don't really want that to be wet. Oh, let's just pop that onto there. Let's just do the bottom of that. And as I say, I will do the back, but off the live in the same colour as that, so that, but it will give me a dry piece for handling. There we are. There we are. Excellent. Have we got it all covered? Well, we can always come back in. So I'm just going to pop my premix with a wet cloth popped over it, over there. That can go in there. Those can go over there. Let's just give that a wee blast dry whilst the going is good, before I make a mess. Get rid of the bits that I didn't particularly want on there, but never mind, we'll sort that. And let's just give this a little bit of a blast. So it's just going to make my life easier if we give it a bit of a blast. And I can do tidy up again off the life. Hi Anya, we are decorating a wooden storage box, and I have used the new Pentacolor wall lacers in Bordeaux. I know it doesn't look very red, but believe me, it is, and it dilutes down to a beautiful magenta and ochre to make a custom brownie shade. Brownie, orangey, whichever. I'm just going to, hopefully, I'm going to tuck that now onto the floor. That can have a little bit longer to dry. And I'm just going to, whilst that's doing that, going to whiz some white gesso onto this. So this comes from the pumpkin mould that comes with Whispering Wood collection, and I'm using pale colours, non-metallic, so I have the white primer paste in front of me rather than anything more, and I've got a dirty brush, so hey ho, but that's okay. So forgive me, but this is going to be a base layer, so it won't matter that I've got a dirty brush. Let's just life. Let's just get into all of the nooks and the crannies because we can. I'm going to do some bits that you don't very often see me doing, and certainly not on a live. There we go. Make sure we cover all the areas, but don't ultimately end up with great big globs of the gesso to get in the way for things. So this is going to be our decorative piece on the front of the storage for pens. So it could be seasonal, it could hold whatever you wanted really. There we are. Could be on a box. You just need a piece that's going to be big enough to pop this piece onto. So that can sit there. There we are. We can pop that there. That can go in there. We'll top that over here. And then let's just go. That can have a bit of a dry. And the bits that I want for here can also then have a little bit of a dry, because I can't do the next bit with this wet. Well, I could, but I might make a mess. So, I have a rice paper from the collection, from the Whispering Wood collection, and I'm going to pop it onto the ends of the piece. So if I just take a pair of scissors, and then we can approximately chop it into where I want it. See, that is way too near the camera. Right, let's just chop that. And I know I've got a pair of scissors here, and you're thinking scissors, but this is going to get filed back anyway, so it doesn't matter if I've got a pair of scissors at this point. And I said I was going to do something different on the sides, so that is just cool. There we are. It's an A4 paper, so that's just approximately to where it needs to be. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Right. That can go there, that can go there. So, oh, I apologise for that if I'm making everyone go sick, silly and sick. And there we are. That's convenient, isn't it? And then we'll chop that approximately there. Not quite in the same place, but hey ho. There we are. Pop that there. And I'm going to just grab my decoupage glue and varnish in matte, and we'll contort ourselves to get that onto the sides of here. Hi Isabel, welcome. So we've got a piece for each end, so let's just pop this onto here. Now if you're being fanatical, you would have painted this piece, these bits, with white gesso first, but I'm not being fanatical because life, quite frankly, is sometimes too short to be fanatical. So let's just pop that onto there. We'll be able to sand it off again once it's all properly dry. Put that down there, give it a little burnish, and then we'll give that, it's definitely going to be one of those lights. I must think about that. So I put the camera down so that, don't you worry, Connie, so that it was, you could see what I was doing, but actually I'd forgotten that with a big piece, it's a while since I've done such a piece that's quite so high. There we are. And let's just do the other side of that. If I pop that, excuse me ladies, I tell you what, just bear with while I reorganize that. because then you might be able to see what I'm doing. Hopefully. There we are. Cameras. Oh. There, excellent. There we are. Then I might stop knocking it, which will also be a bit nicer for everyone and stop you feeling quite so seasick as with me bumping it. So this is it's just a decoupage varnishing glue. It's my go-to mat that I use for everything. I'll pop that one onto there, line that up so it's evenly fitted, and as I say, I will sand off the excess anyway, so that's okay. So let's just pop that onto there so that the edges of my piece are going to have that plaid on it, which is an autumn colour palette, I think, so it should look quite nice with the whole piece. And I've picked up some black, so that's always helpful, isn't it? Not. There we are. So those can sit there now and dry whilst that settles. And I'll tell you what, we will. So this is when I said I was going to be controversial. So this beautiful stencil from Whispering Woods, I want to put at the bottom, but because I want this piece inconsiderately, and I want it right down towards the bottom, so I am just going to give my stencil a haircut. You do just need to be aware of where the edges of all the pieces are when you're doing this, and then keep all the pieces as you want them. And I'm going to chop the top bit off as well, which will require me to be careful when I'm stenciling, but that's okay. So don't be afraid to take your stencils and give them a bit of a haircut. They're yours to use as you see fit, but this means I can then get this a bit nearer the bottom, which is actually where I want it, into there. So let me give this a spray with some stencil spray. Any stencil spray will work. Approximately pop that into there. There we are. And then let's find some paints and my stencil brushes. I'm going to do this in layers, she says. So 1, 2, 3. There we are. So I have a pale colour. This is Vintage Yellow acrylic paint matte, but it's not going to stay in that colour, so we're just going to take a little bit of that, and then I'm going to tap the vast majority of it off. And then we're going to do rinse and repeat this, I'm afraid, as we offset. So a little bit of paint onto your brush, tap off as much as you can so it's not quite dry. We're not dry brushing, but we are definitely not wanting to flood underneath our stencil, and lots of thin layers is definitely better than trying to do this in one fell swoop. It just is not, you know, you'll end up with it leaching under stuff, which is not making a mess if you do that. And as we all know, stenciling is not necessarily my preferred activity, but sometimes this is quite helpful. And a lot of this we're not ultimately going to see, but there will be a suspicion of it. I like to layer my stencils and give a little bit so that it looks a little bit more like they might have a bit of dimension to them. So whilst this one is here, and that can come off ultimately. So just put that onto there. As I say, okay, so there we are. We have a layer of stenciling, and I can pop that there. I'm going to do a similar thing with the inside of the top of here. So that's going to prove a challenge, I think, maybe. Wow, let's just give it another haircut so I can get that in, or maybe not. There we are. In fact, we'll do it this way. We'll add in some extra pieces. So that's going to go there. And of course, the joy of stencils is, of course, that they are reversible. So I will have to give it a clean to reverse it. Sorry, while I do that, I'll show you what I've done. Ooh, she says, having let it move because I didn't glue it into place. But that's fine. That was my silliness, because it really does make a difference if you pop some stencil glue on just to hold it, something that's going to allow it to come off as you want. Okay, so I have a layer of stenciling in there, and I'm going to flip that because this is not a mirrored stencil. It's a continuous piece. There we are. And let's just give that a dry, because otherwise we will have a pickle. There we are. That's the piece. So so that is that. That's going to go over there. So let's just pop this so it's not quite symmetrical, but that's fine, into there. And then let's just tuck that down and add that. Just add in that extra layer. I might regret this when it comes to offsetting later on, but hey ho. We will do our best. Because I've got very little paint on here now, I can actually do a little bit more sweepy movements. There we are. So now I've got just a little bit of extra detail in the top of there, which I think works quite nicely, almost framing that. So I'm going to pop that over there. Whilst that paper glue dries, I'm just going to pop it onto the floor and stick that over there and give that stencil brush a dry, because we're going to need brushes that are reasonably dry for multi-layering as we go. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Let's pop that over there. Hi, Blanche. It's a really great stencil. Hi, Kathy. Thank you for joining us. Now then, where was my brain? Oh, I know that. My brain's a dangerous place, isn't it? Of course it's a dangerous place. There we are. Let's keep this relatively straightforward tonight, because we can. There we are. So that, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Let's just move that, move that, move that, move that. There we are. Pop that onto there. Move this forward. There we are. We can see what we're up to. So this is our, let me just, yeah, it's blinding, isn't it? Our resin piece, and we'll go from here, and it's just got, I've got some olive paint. Thank you. I think so. I think so. So let's just, and it's going to go through, definitely go through a messy stage whilst we're doing this, and that is also just fine. I'm not mithered about that. We will, because that's just part of the process, and because I'm intending just wiping back this green, so because it's going to be quick and simple and easy, and it will work. So let's just paint this. So this is metallic, a matte acrylic, so water-based acrylic paint. Makes easy wash up, doesn't need anything specific for cleaning it. Will dry relatively quickly, and that is cool. So there we are. You'll be able to ultimately see what we're up to. So let's just give that a little wipe back. There we are. So that's immediately added lots of interest to that piece with minimal effort whatsoever. And the reason I'm doing this first is that then I can paint over the bits on the pumpkin that I don't want green. Whereas if I did this second, after I've painted the pumpkin, I will then end up having to repaint the pumpkin, because it'll end up, you know, it's inevitable when you're wiping back that you will end up with a bit of a pickle along the way. There we are. Let's just get into all of those nooks and the crannies. That's reasonable. I think there's a bit more greenery under there. I can see a bit there that I missed. There we are. Well, let's just pop that into there. Just give this a wee wipe back. You can see what I mean by I was going to end up with my pumpkin the wrong colour if I wasn't very careful. So that softens that quite a lot, and you can carry on. And once it's dry, because it's an acrylic paint, it will be permanent, but it's just easy to do that, and won't take lots of effort. And I could get out some velvet powders if I wanted to make it more textured, but actually I think sometimes simple is the way to go. So I have an orange acrylic paint. Okay, let's get rid of the mess. Pop that over there, pop that over here, which I think is too orange for the purposes of what I want to do. So we'll just pop that, oops, over there. There we are. And I have a yellow red clay. So I want it more orange. And I'm just taking my colours from the paper collection and from that rice paper that I've chosen for the slides. And then we can have a little bit of a mix of these colours. I need a reasonably decent brush, but I'm not going to mix it together with a decent brush because it won't stay looking decent for very long if I do that. So adding the red clay is just going to mute that orange just a little bit, so it's not quite so in your face. And did I get a brown? Did I get a brown out? No, of course I didn't get a brown out. I know exactly where I can grab it from though. Okay. So let's just add some orange now onto our pumpkin. There we are. Let's just grab a brown. Let's just grab red brown. Hi Teresa, welcome. Thank you so much. There we are. Might be throwing that away soon. That'll be good, won't it? Yeah, of course it will. We've got lots of bits and pieces, so that's okay. So let's just take some of that red brown, soften that down. Let's just add that into there. And let's just make our tendrils more brown. I think that's a tendril. There we are. And there we are. It's definitely a different colour, but there we are to the pumpkin. There we are. Just so that we've got some colour variation. There we are, there we are, there we are. Right. Now I know that I want to add just a little bit of darkness into those edges of that, into the lines and the veins, to give this pumpkin a little bit more depth. There we are. Let's get rid of some of that. We can come back in, spread that around a little bit, and it's just going to add just a little bit of extra depth into that so that the pumpkin doesn't look a flat colour. There we are. Okay. And I can see that I've missed some bits of the green, so just bear with while I tidy up the edges of the green on the bottom of there. There we are. So that can go over there. Actually, that can sit up there. That can go over there to dry. And we're going to need that out. And we're going to need that out probably. And that brush can go in there. Look at the state of my fingers, because why wouldn't I have a mess on my hands? So let's just now pick up this box. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a blast dry. And grab a sanding pad. Take some of this stuff off the way. So I'm just going to give this along the top. I'll do the edges off the live. That just needs a bit of a dry. Okay. And we'll grab a nail file because we've got a shaped edge, so we're just going to take the edge of that off. We'll do it roughly. We can always see we've missed a bit of the glue there. That's fine. We'll sort that out in a minute. There we are. There we are. We're just going to take that. I obviously need a newer file. There we are. That can go there. That can go there. I will file off those edges. I will tidy that up off the live. But let's just do the same then here on the other side. It's just going to take these pieces out of my way because they are going to be in the way. There we are. Let's see what we're doing. Just take that off there. Take that off there. There we are. That's that piece taken off there. We're not quite off at this point, but we will be in a minute. Okay, so we could, if we were feeling particularly lazy, just ultimately pop this piece onto here. And I've clearly missed the brown there. So let me just correct that bit, because clearly I am daft. Yeah, we could literally just pop that onto there and call it done. We're not going to. We're clearly not going to, but there we are. Let's just add some more of that red brown onto there. Make sure we've done all of those bits. I always miss a bit, don't I? There we are. I think it's just live. There we are. Okay. So that can sit there. So let's just pop this here, because I said that I was going to add to this. I might regret it. So I'm just going to line this up, and then I'm going to shovel it just off and down the merest fraction. Okay, and we're going to pop it back into place. I think we've probably moved it just a little bit too far. There we are. Okay. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that green and add that into the leaves and the twirly bits. There we are. Because I've chopped it up, I am having to be relatively careful at the top and the bottom, because I haven't given myself a huge amount of space to move with. Let's just take some of that brown and get rid of most of that. Let's just add in some of that brown for the tops of those pumpkins. Maybe not. Maybe it'll end up more green than brown, but that's okay, because that's on the change, isn't it? I don't have a problem with that. And then I think, going to, so that orange is quite close to that. So let's just go back to that bright orange in its own right. There we are. And I know I've got a dirty brush, and that's also just fine. And I might regret this. I might have preferred it as it was before, but hey ho. But it's going to be subtle, and it will work. And it will just add just a little bit of depth. Just need into here. There we are. So I've now got my pieces looking more dimensional, and that can sit over there. Go over there. Right, so let us turn this round. Let's just move that. I am going to come back to my stencil that I've popped into here. Now I moved that across and down a little bit, across and down. So let's just pop that down in the same sort of way, and then let's just take some of that. I'm not minded about it being a dirty colour. And I could pick out the acorns that are in that vine separately if I wanted to. There we are. It's so worth just adding that extra layer. It just makes a big difference to the piece. And remember, it is a stencil, so I can flick it over, and then I'm going to line it up. So this is a technique that Vasilis uses sometimes, and move it down and across just a little bit, and then let's just take this and add that over. just adds an extra depth and an extra layer of interest to our pieces. Now I could add, if I wanted to, some stenciling onto the sides of the project, but I'm going to leave it. Okay, so there we are. So if I lift this up, you can then see both of the layers of paint, and it just gives that shadow. So that can go there. Now we can clean some of the mess, because cleaning the mess is now required, because otherwise I will get this lot everywhere. Good evening, Teresa. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. I trust all is well in Italy. There we are. So I know that I need to paint the back, and I can do the similar thing on the back. I know I need to file the back, okay, of here. I'm going to pop that onto there. So I know it's partly covering, but I've got an area here that I want to add something to. And so this is a stamp set. It is WTK 226, goes with Springwood's collection, and we're going to try, because it's always a bit of a risk doing this live on air. Right. We're definitely going to need an ink pad that is reasonably robust, and I know that my black Stamperia permanent ink pad should work for this. Okay, so do I want to pop that onto a plate? So I have a little stamping block, because it's going to make my life easier. It might not stamp as well from this. That's where I want to pop this ultimately, and that's fine. This is a permanent ink. I've got a slightly textured surface. That's not going to work very nicely. So let me just take VersaFine Clair, which is a solvent-based ink, and that will ultimately dry, but it's a much juicier ink pad. So let's just take that out of the way, have that reasonably central, pop it in, just make sure that you don't rock it. And I've got my fingers in the inside of that box. Out. There we are. So I've now got the word grateful on there, and I know that that's a solvent base, and it will stay wet for a little while. So you could at this point use some embossing powder on there quite happily, but I'm just going to give this a little bit of a blast dry. Although it's a solvent based ink pad, it will dry. Take a wee while in some of the areas, but that's okay. You just need to be careful with what we're doing, because I know it'll take a while. So whilst that's doing that, as I say, I know I need to sand off the edges, and I'm going to repeat this stenciling on the back, but not on the line, because really life is too short for doing said activities. There we are. So I now have a little bit of a chalky acrylic, and that's just in cream white. We're going to add some splatters with that as well. So I'm just going to take my my resin piece and add some dry brushing onto there. There we are. That will helpfully bring out some of the details. Thin layers better than thick layers, always for dry brushing. There we are. There we are. So let's just grab my favourite, pop this onto here. There we are. take that out of the way. I'll take that out of the way. Put that over there. Straighten that up for everyone. Let's just pop this onto here. So we've got the beautiful soft colours into there. Let's just pop that. So this is my heavy body gel matte, which of course is my preferred gel medium for gluing, but you use whatever. But yeah, if you prefer the glossy, you use the glossy. That's also fine. So that, I'm going to take the excess off there first. I'm going to line that up into there. Pop that onto there. There we are. And I'm afraid it really wouldn't be me, but without adding a little bit of extra onto that. And so we're going to just grab some delicate in, I think we're going to go antique silver. I think we're going to go antique silver. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of that delicate for a little bit of extra sparkle, because why not? A little bit of spray so that that is there. And my favourite brush for doing splatters, which of course is a fan brush, because it just works for it. So I'm going to move that, and I always test to make sure I can. So this is just going to add a subtle shimmer. And I could get out a contour pen, which conveniently I do have out in, I think this is the bronze. So let's just pop. But I know this was causing me grief earlier on, so there we are. Okie dokie. So I might just add little blobs. There we are. Let's just pop a single one into there, because I think that will work. There we are. So now I just need to find what I've done with the lid for that. So ladies, we've done a little bit of basic decoupage this evening. We have custom coloured our lasur to make the colour base that I wanted. We have done some offset stenciling to add detail and interest, both on the outside and the inside. We've added a little bit of stamping for our word. We have an almighty mess here. I have a little bit, once this is all set, that I will need to use to finish the back. And I might add some wax around the edges. But that is, or will be, once it's all dry, our storage for pens, papers, or knives, forks, spoons, and cutlery. So there we are. So that is our make for tonight. I trust all that is good for everyone. So next week I will put my head around using Voyage is Fantastic and you doing an art journal type project for everyone. Because I think that will be helpful. So ladies, please stay safe. Enjoy the week ahead, because that's always a good evening. Oops, I didn't mean to do that, my darling. Let me hide that comment. That's my bad. And be kind to yourself, because no one else, if nothing else, that means that you're kind to yourself and be that every week. And I will see you online soon. Bye.